come to fellowship with others. Scanlon Hall is the place where we come to celebrate our connections and discover the joy of being with each other. Please take the time to silence your devices and to be comfortable. Please know that we live stream our services to YouTube, where they will live and remain till who knows when. We stream our services so that those at home or away may participate and be part of our service, part of our community. And I've noticed that word community is probably derived from two words, common, unity. We also have a new computer this morning, courtesy of our Board of Trustees. Jake is testing that out, and Jake does so much for us. So, thank you, and we have an opening hymn called Ancient Mother. Jake?
Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears.
Yeah, my note was here that we do rely upon the UUA to help us with copyrighted materials. So in turn, we financially support the writers, the singers, and the musicians. Today's Ancient Mother music asks for a pay-what-you-can donation, and it's used by, with permission from the UUA. We have a chalice lighting this morning. Can someone help out with that? Oh, hi, Mindy. You want to come up and do that?
This is a congregation that gathers in faith. Not faith in one religion, or one God, or any one way. We gather in faith in the power of diversity, the power of love, and the hope of a world transformed by our care. We gather in faith in ourselves and those around us. Not a faith that requires perfection or rightness in one another. Rather, a faith in our shared imperfection, that we may learn to stumble and fall together. Faith that we will help one another to rise and to try again and again. We are Unitarian Universalists.
Thank you, Mindy. And Aaron will give us a story for all ages.
Good morning. So children, if you'd like to come up and sit up here so you can see the pictures better, you definitely can. Good morning. Hi, Bert. Well, come on up so you can see. Good morning. So the story I'm going to read today is The End is Just the Beginning, a book of endless possibilities. And it starts out in a very interesting way. The end. That's right. You read it correctly. You've reached the end and the beginning. But wait, how can a book possibly start with the end? That's ridiculous. Well, prepare to have your mind blown, because the end isn't really the end. It's just the beginning of something else. Like this beautiful sunset. Sure seems like the end of the day, right? Right, but not so fast. You see, when the sun goes down, it's just the beginning of night. It's okay. When all the snow melts at the end of winter, that just means it's the beginning of spring. We didn't have much snow, did we, this last winter? I know. If you try to go to the ends of the earth, you'll actually just keep going back to the beginning, because the earth is one big circle. Excellent. Obloid spheroid? Obloid spheroid. Obloid spheroid. Okay. I don't think I can say that 3 times fast. Okay. You're awesome. Okay. If you blast off in a rocket ship, you'll reach the end of the sky, otherwise known as the beginning of outer space. When you count, the end of one number is just the beginning of the next number, and so on, and so on, and so on, all the way to infinity, which, by the way, never ends. Even a sign that literally says dead end isn't an end at all. It's only just the beginning of whatever lies beyond it. So, when you really think about it, the end is entirely endless. The end of a disagreement with someone is just the beginning of making up. The end of a mistake is just the beginning of learning something new. The end of being sick is just the beginning of feeling better. The end of dinner is just the beginning of dessert. And if you're really well behaved, the end of dessert might just be the beginning of more dessert. So tonight, when you turn off the lights and go to bed, don't think of it as the end of anything. Just think of it as the beginning of a new tomorrow, full of possibilities. The beginning of discovering the next book. Somewhere on the shelf. And I just really like this last picture on the cover. Actually, Miss Pinky is going to carry the lantern today. So friends, stand up and hear Miss Pinky.
Thank you, Aaron, that was delightful. Let's join in and sing This Little Light of Mine as children exit.
Behind Pinky and Pinky.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. So wonderful to have those children with us. Time for announcements, joys and concerns, birthdays, anniversaries, and announcements, etc. I have a few. Helen Newman had hip surgery on March 15th and is recovering at home. She would appreciate cards of encouragement, but no visitors at this time.
She's back in the hospital, Rob.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, she has 2 or 3 different infection surgeries.
Oh, no, okay. Okay, thank you.
She'll be there till tomorrow or the next day.
Okay. Did everyone catch that? Bob may have tried to communicate that to me, I may have misunderstood. Lou Hoover is at home today, and I understand she's not feeling well, not able to be with us. And Walt and Adele are celebrating 63 years of marriage. Are there other announcements, joys and concerns, birthdays, anniversaries?
Okay, I'm Vicki George. One announcement is in 2 weeks it will be second Sunday lunch, and Jana Cook and Suzanne Emilio are going to be in the kitchen. They're the kitchen captains. I shall be hopefully in Seattle with my daughter. But I'm going to be passing this around, and let me see. Since it's Mother's Day, bring something your mom might have made. But maybe if your mom is a bad cook, forget that idea. And then joys and concerns, we have, the pandemic really hit us hard like a lot of places. But since we've really been back in business, we now have basically 12 new members, okay? Now, we had 5 that were recognized the last time we had new member recognition last month, and then we had Michael Forstein, who transferred his membership over. So that gives you 6. And then today, I'm reading the names of 6 who are already actively involved or who are on people's radar already. Okay. So Jacob Starr. Jacob, raise your hand over there. Wife of fabulous Skylar and father of awesome Addie. Okay. And Carol and Orion Jordan, raise your hands over there. Okay. have already volunteered. They say they want to be involved in social justice, and they bring with them a whole wealth of connections in the community through Democratic headquarters and League of Women Voters. We've got Marilyn and Matthew Bordelon. Where are they? Okay. And yes, they have already signed up for Second Sunday Lunch. And yes, and they've got two fabulous kids, Tyler and little Pinky, that went out. And what I remember most about Pinky is when she was up here dancing during a story once, and Marilyn is trying to tell her to sit down. Pinky's turning around and doing this to her mom. So, as our daughter who was raised in this group knows, we raise fierce little girls and compassionate little boys here. So it's worthwhile. And then Adam Montgomery signed this morning. Adam's going to be on the Social Justice Committee. Raise your hand, Adam. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
So I'm Krista Conley, and the annual geranium sale is fast approaching. It's about, it's 2 weeks from yesterday, on Saturday, May 13th. That's the day before Mother's Day. So we'll be having 12-inch pot geraniums for $30. We're going to have them in white splash, pink, purple, salmon, and red. So, and then we'll also have a limited number of ferns. Those are 10-inch ferns that are hanging. And good news, we will also be selling tamales and pupusas at the same time in the same parking lot. We're going to be in the east parking lot. We start at 8 a.m. until we sell out. And so come for the geraniums and stay for the tamales.
You guys will have to tell me if you can hear me because I'm bad at this. I have a concern that, and you guys all know this, that the world is like an increasingly scary place for transgender youth and adults. And I wanted to let everybody know that there's actually a protest at the Capitol on Thursday afternoon. So if you guys want to show up after work, I'll be there with snacks and water. You can find more information on Facebook. The event is called Trans and Alive. So hope to see you guys there. I think it starts at 4. But I might be wrong, so look on Facebook.
They wanted to announce the results of the meat sale that was held. $2,352.15.
Wow. Wow. I invite all those who participated in the rummage sale that Gina announced to stand. Those who volunteered, those who worked, those who baked, those who donated, lifted, carried, merchandised, priced, placed signs, handled money, sacked, and delivered goods to raise funds for our fellowship. Thank you. Have I overlooked anything?
Yeah, me.
It takes a village, folks. Thank you all.
My name is Carolyn Peck, and I'm on the search committee. And I wanted to make sure that everybody knew kind of what we were doing and where we are in the process. We are like this close to interviewing. We've got all the stuff ready, and so what we need from you guys is if any of you know anybody who knows somebody who might be a wonderful minister for us, contact somebody in the search committee and we can send them the information that they need. And I'd like the search committee, the members that are here, Greg I know is the chairman and he's not here, he left because we had a meeting this morning, but if the rest of you on the search committee would stand up so that those of you who are here know these are the contact people, including myself.
Thank you for your hard work. It's me again.
I know it gets old. Okay, so I've got a number of announcements today, but the most important one is where we're at on the pledge drive. So, our goal was $165,000, and we know you have to understand the way this works. We come up with a dream budget, and we try to earn money to that dream budget, to raise money to that dream budget, and then we see how much we can raise, and we take that number, and we redo the budget. And we take it to the board says okay, and then there'll be a congregational meeting. More on the congregational meeting in a minute, okay? To date, we have raised $132,400, which is 80% of the goal. It's almost, we're getting close to $10,000 more than we raised last year. So we're making some progress here, okay? And I thank everybody for pledging. Now, even more importantly is that we are going to vote on the budget at the congregational meeting. And you might ask, when is the congregational meeting? It is Sunday, June 4th. So the first Sunday in June will be the congregational meeting. There will be pizza, which is, assorted salads, and a dessert potluck, so bring a dessert, okay? It'll be at 12 noon, right after the service, and we will vote on the budget, which is, and your officers for the coming year, the board of directors. So, even more importantly, is how do you get to vote? Okay, if you are a member, and you have made a contribution of record, then you are able to vote. If you are a member and have not yet made your contribution of record for this fiscal year that ends on June 30th, in the basket that will be coming around when I stop talking, okay, there are envelopes. Please put your contribution of record in that envelope, either today or next Sunday or whatever, and write your name on it, so when it comes back, we can credit that to you. Okay? You have a question there?
No, sorry.
Okay. So, but that only applies to people who have not made a contribution of record yet. If you pledge for next year, that's not considered a contribution of record, but if you've been putting money on the plate, it is. That works, plate or basket, whatever you want to call it. Okay, any questions on that? Seeing none, I continue. Okay, newsletter. If you have anything that needs to go into the newsletter, it needs to come today to Cynthia. After today, it will no longer be available for this current issue of the newsletter. Only one last thing. Several of us will be, the congregation and anyone here today, will be singing Mozart's Requiem Mass next Sunday at 7 p.m. at White Concert Hall. And it's quite a deal. It'll be full orchestra and organ, and it will be pretty spectacular. There's also a children's chorus that's going to precede us, the Kansas Children's Chorus, I think. At any rate. So if you have any questions about any of the stuff I've talked about today, please come and see me. Or if for some reason you haven't pledged and you want to, and I've somehow missed you, come and see me. Thank you.
David, thank you.
Thank you, David.
Yep.
I hope to see you next Sunday. This morning we have a pagan chant to accompany our offering, and it is used with permission. It is called the earth, the air, the fire, and the water.
The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye. The earth, the air, the fire, the water. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh. Aye, 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 oh, aye, oh, aye, oh, aye, oh.
Your program committee knows that how many of you, or some of you at least, prefer to have a minister speaking and being present with us. As you know, the Ministerial Search Committee is doing what it can at this time, as Carolyn announced, to have a minister here with us. Today's speaker is on video, coming video, titled Coming Out of Our Shell. It's by Rev Sarah Schurr, who serves as a primary contact for all congregations in states of Washington, Montana, and Wyoming. In addition to her primary contact work, Sarah is a Pacific Western Region Specialist for small congregation concerns. The video is used by permission and covers a lot of ground about baby chicks hatching, congregations facing big changes, racial tensions, activism, COVID, grief, life's transitions, baby ducks, and struggle. Quite a ground there. So Jake is going to play that video for us.
Hello, good people. I want to tell you a little story today about a conversation I had with my eldest grandson, Everett. He is 3. In his preschool class, they'd been talking about chickens hatching out of eggs. All very interesting stuff. That evening, I asked if he wanted to watch a video of a real baby chicken being born out of their egg. He thought that sounded great, and YouTube provided exactly what we were looking for. Now, Everett is kind of a cautious and sensitive kid. When we started to watch the video, he noticed how the little chicken was working hard, was in some distress. This little chicken's breathing was fast, and he struggled with the job of hatching. Everett got concerned, and he said to me, "And if the little chicken doesn't like it outside, he can go back inside his egg." I said to him, "No. When the little chicken is ready to hatch, he's too big for his egg. He has to come out. He has to, even if it's really hard." Yep. That's a metaphor for life, isn't it? And my mind went immediately to a reading I once heard from the Reverend Nancy Bowen. I didn't share this reading with Everett, but I'll share it with you now. It's from the Book of Awakening, Having the Life You Want by Being Present to the Life You Have by Mark Nepo. Confined and curled in the dark shell, half formed, the chick eats all its food and stretches to its contours of its shell. It begins to feel hungry and cramped. Eventually, the chick begins to starve and feel suffocated by the ever-shrinking space of its world. Finally, its own growth begins to crack the shell, and the world as the chick knows it comes to an end. The sky is falling. As the chick wriggles through the cracks, it begins to eat its shell. In that moment, growing but fragile, starving and cramped, its world breaking, the chick must feel like it's dying. Yet once everything it's relied on falls away, the chick is born. It doesn't die, but falls into the world. As a member of the congregational life staff in the Pacific Western region, I've talked to a lot of congregations in the past year or so who've been facing big changes of one kind or another. A number of lost important staff members, like religious educators or musicians or even ministers. And it's not always been easy to find applicants to fill those staff positions. And volunteers, oh, they're even harder to find. And many congregations worry about how to get kids to return to youth programs. There's a lot of worry about how to get things back on track. And the last few years, wow, talk about changes in this world. When so many of us watched George Floyd die under the knee of a policeman, we can't unsee that. People who really didn't want to think about racism and how it acts in the world today could no longer pretend it was just a thing of another time, another place. Thousands, millions around the world took to the streets. We saw Black Lives Matter signs go up on the sides not only of churches, but cafes, sports arenas, shoe stores. At least where I live, they're still up. And we at the UUA, we're no longer looking at racism as that thing other people do. We're looking hard at how we are steeped in a culture of white supremacy. And by that, I mean we're steeped in a culture that assumes that white middle-class people like I come from, that that's the way of doing things that's usual and expected, and that ways of doing things other than that are somehow strange, maybe exotic. And the first draft is now available, the Article 2 Study Commission. The Article 2 Commission was charged with doing some major edits on the purposes and principles of the UUA. This newly proposed document speaks directly to our call to dismantle racism in all forms of oppression. This is a really big deal, my friends. We're changing from those nice liberals who want to help those poor people over there to a group of folks who can look hard at the complexities of racism inside and outside of our congregations. It is difficult work, and it is necessary work. The world is changing. And I say to you, Unitarian Universalism is changing. It has to. It has to. How can our faith not change if we're truly part of a changing world? And the COVID-19 pandemic turned the world upside down. For so many families, there were holidays spent apart. Kids were trying to go to school online often while parents were trying to work from home. And many people got sick, some very, very sick. The New York Times reported that nearly 1 million people in America died of COVID-19. Most all of our churches and fellowships switched to online-only meetings, classes, and worship services. Different people and different groups have found different thresholds about what felt COVID safe to them at different times during the pandemic. Lots of variety out there. And many congregations now allow in-person meetings, while others have opened and closed their doors and reopened. What I can say is that when the pandemic hit, I was profoundly impressed with our UU congregations. Our people made hard changes and made them in a big hurry, looking out for the common good, Congregations learned how to do Zoom worship in just a matter of weeks. Big congregations with lots of tech resources, yes, but also small and remote congregations made the change to online services when that's what the times called for. It was amazing. Members who would never have considered Zoom as a way to be with friends suddenly got really good at it. If that's the only choice you have for gathering in the pandemic, you can get pretty motivated to learn a new system. It's been super impressive. I've been super impressed. But here's what we're finding in our work of congregations these days. Going into lockdown was hard, but we did it. Coming out is way harder. There's more uncertainty and more anxiety. There's more complicated decisions to make coming back than there were when this all started. Feeling like we're all over the map. The Reverend Lynn Unger summed it up really well in a poem she wrote called Moving On. Maybe you expected it would come in a wave of relief. Ollie ollie oxen free, and everything would be fine. We'd be back to the familiar world of hugs and handshakes and easy assumptions of the presence of strangers. Of course, it didn't work that way. Safer is not the same as safe, which turns out to have always been more elusive than we thought. Somehow the world opens up, slowly, in fits and starts, and also in an incomprehensible rush. There are more choices and less clarity, more possibilities, but not more wisdom. You're not wrong to be tentative. You're not wrong to be bold. That's just the way it is with grief. This is simply the nature of spring. Lynn Unger is so wise when she points out that this is, in part, a process of grief. I actually think that how we deal with change is nearly always related to grief in some way. I mean, think about it. When we change from one stage to another, there's a loss of that former stage. The 14-year-old may be jazzed about starting high school with the new class offerings and football games and theater productions, but they may at the same time kind of miss the closeness of that fifth grade class with the teacher who knew everyone so well. Getting a new job may fill us with excitement and pride, but also involves saying farewell to coworkers and a system that felt so familiar. Grief is a part of all of our lives, and it shows up in so many ways. Shows up in our congregations. I think we often have grief issues, fear of loss, that keep congregations from making the changes they need to make. There are many different kinds of grief and loss, ones you may have never considered. Pastoral scholars like Kenneth Mitchell and Herbert Anderson talk about 6 major types of loss and grief associated with them. There's material loss. This could be the loss you feel when you say goodbye to an object. Maybe you lost a favorite piece of jewelry, or you had to sell that car you always loved. I can tell you that when my husband had to give up the sports car he bought as a young adult, he dealt with some grief, for sure. And for individuals, families, and congregations, they might feel a kind of loss when they move from one home to another. You might feel a sense of loss selling your building, even if you know it's a good idea. Saying farewell to a home, it can be hard, even if it's for a really good reason. There's relationship loss. This is when your buddy moves away or when a loved one dies. This is really common when congregations change ministers. People often miss the minister who was there when they joined, or the friends who befriended them when they were new. They feel like that's the real congregation, at least in their hearts. Sometimes we experience intrapsychic loss. This is when we have a loss of an important image of ourselves, or we have to let go of a dream that was never fulfilled. I remember when I realized I was too old to be an Olympic athlete. I was only in my 20s when that happened, but I began to notice that that ship had just sailed for me, which is funny since I'd never been athletic to begin with. This intrapsychic loss. has to do with how we see ourselves and our place in the world. For some people, it can feel like kind of a crisis of faith or a loss of identity. I think this is a big one for some white Unitarian Universalists of my generation when it relates to social justice issues. We really prided ourselves on being the good guys for justice work. Racism was what those other people had, like the KKK, the bad people. But now, realizing that racism is just part of the water we're all swimming in, that we can't escape the ways it has shaped us, even while we're still good people. This is hard. This is confusing and makes a lot of people uncomfortable. It requires reimagining ourselves and our place in the world. It is the intrapsychic loss of letting go of how we thought things worked in the world. There's functional loss. This is when we have some kind of changes in our body or illness that means we can't do things we used to do or can't do things that others do. This could include the loss people face with a new diagnosis of something like Parkinson's disease or progressive hearing loss. It's tough when you suddenly feel like your body has changed and is working against you in some ways now. Most of us with arthritic joints understand that feeling pretty well. And related to this can be role loss. This is when we experience a change in our place in the social network. A common example of this is retirement. Retirement can be hard for a lot of people, especially if they took great pride in their work or the job they had was a big part of their identity. They can be feeling a big role loss and sometimes a change of status. They're no longer the doctor, the judge, the principal. This also plays out very clearly in our congregations at times of change. For instance, a friend's church had a sexton who'd always taken very good care of their building, but when he was in his 80s, he could no longer climb the ladder to change the light bulbs. This was a difficult transition, as you can imagine. But here's another example that's actually really quite common. In a congregation where there's a person who's always been in charge of, say, the yard sale committee. But now the new minister or the new board decides they don't need to hold a yard sale anymore. It just uses up a lot of volunteer energy and time, and they don't make that much money anyway for all the work it takes. Well, this can be a serious loss of role for that yard sale committee chair. And that kind of thing can happen in our churches all the time. New leaders come in, which is a good thing, but the longtime leaders can often feel displaced or threatened. They'll sometimes even undermine the new leaders to keep some kind of backdoor power. This is not good, my friends. Now, I'm not saying we all need to have octogenarian sextons or we continue to keep yard sales forever. Not saying that. But it does mean sometimes people get very attached to their role in the church. And it takes a lot of sensitivity and care when it's time for that role to change for the good of the community. And these changes are often very much needed for the good of the community. And lastly, there's systemic loss. It's when we change in the membership that has a difference in the process of the group, that has ripples over the entire community in unexpected ways. Maybe there's a new board president who has a different style in a meeting. This certainly happens when we get a new minister. The way the board functions might be different. And when there's a change in leadership, folks sometimes react. It's particularly common in a time of size transition. The way things were done before, it'll shift, and it has ripples in the entire system. There's a general uneasiness and discomfort at first. It's as if someone stirs the pot of stew and the vegetables settle in a new position at the bottom of the pot. Things are not the way they used to be. And that is okay. It's just how it is in the life of a great organization like your wonderful church. So change is hard. Change is hard in part because it involves grief. And grief is best handled by seeing it and acknowledging it, by giving it some space and time, by talking about the grief and being together with our feelings, by finding a way to reminisce without trying to bring back the past. The work of grief is the work of religious community, to be sure. It always has been. It is just the work we do. And you've faced grief as a congregation before. I'm sure you have. And I expect you have as individuals as well. And you will again. It's hard sometimes, but you have what it takes. I have absolute confidence that you have what it takes. So I took a walk down by the water at the local college campus a few weeks ago. I like to take walks there. School started way back in August. The kids have settled into their dorms and are feeling at home in the new space. The place where I walk is a college I attended when I was a young adult. I have a lot of memories at that place. Some memories of struggle, but more of friends and good times. One thing I always remember was the baby ducks in the spring and summer. They would show up just at the right time when the finals had been hard and the plans for next year were kind of scary. That time of life has a lot going on after all. Well, then the baby ducks would start peeping and swimming in the canyon. And for some reason, it always seemed to be a sign that life is good and life goes on. It's always something that gives me hope. And I saw baby ducks this last spring and summer when I walked in the canyon. It made me very excited. But I also got to think about that discussion I had with my grandson, Everett, about staying in the egg if it feels just too difficult to hatch. I realized that those little fluffy balls in the water, they'd each undergone an amazing feat of courage and strength within the last few weeks. They might not be strong to look at, but they are inspirational heroes. They made it out of their egg, even though it was hard. And within a week or so of hatching, they got into the water to swim around. So much in one little being's short life. But they couldn't stay in the shell and survive. Hatching, falling into the world, it was necessary. It was not optional. They had to do it. And swimming, it's just part of what they do, part of their role in the universe. Changing is important for all of us. It's what we're doing all the time, like it or not. May we do it with courage and with sensitivity to the grief involved. May we choose to face our changes with fortitude and with grace. May it be so, my friends.
Morning sermon, morning talk, whatever we want to call that. So this begins our congregational dialogue time. If you have something you'd like to respond to from our service. So a reminder is if you'd like to speak, come to the microphone and identify yourself. And another reminder is to know that we are live streaming. Hearing none. Indeed, we'll do our final reading, closing reading. And thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, our care for each other, our service to each other, to the world, to our faith continues. Until we are together again, friends, be strong, be well, be true, be loving. Thank you.